Hello, call me Snacks, and today I'm presenting a theological argument for an odd perfect number, because some people believe that odd perfect numbers exist if you get really, really big, and I think that's whack, because there's a very specific binary correlation to perfect numbers that seems to be a requirement for a number to be perfect. Not all perfect numbers, not all perfect numbers follow this binary requirement, but not all numbers with that binary pattern follow, are perfect numbers. But I got that going right here. I'm just going to leave it up right now because this is less about math and numbers and more about spirituality, religion, understanding God as the one, as the all, that which cannot be compared to, that cannot be comprehended, the God who is everything, who allows everything, the most powerful in the universe, God. And my argument is that God makes one a perfect number. It's my argument, and I've got a triple religious threat argument prepared for it, following different branches or different disciplines of the Abrahamic and Christian faith. Thank you. So the first piece of evidence that I would like to bring forward is from the Apocryphon of John. This is a 2nd century text. Remember, John the Beloved lived well into his old age, so I think he died probably close to like 90 AD. So a 2nd century text from somebody who would have spoken and learned from John is not out of the realm of possibilities. And why is this a secret book of John? Because the Council of Nicaea wanted it buried with a bunch of other books, which is why the Nag Hammadi Library is so cool. If you don't know what the Nag Hammadi Library is, they are 52 early Christian texts, detailing more the secret teachings of Christ. The less physical, hey, Jesus is a dude that God put on this earth to, save us, and then for him to die so that we can understand that Jesus was a man, but the pre-existent Christ that was within Jesus, that's real. That's where I stand. But this is one of the secret teachings of John, and I like it. I like the Nag Hammadi text. I love reading religion and spirituality in general because it feels very core to me, very important. And so without further ado, let me start. A lot of you have probably never heard of this book, and this isn't the full thing. I urge everybody to go and read the entire thing. It's on gnosis.org, as well as all 52 texts from the Nag Hammadi Library. So let me start. One day, John, the brother of James, these are the sons of Zebedee, was going up to the temple. A Pharisee by the name of Arimaneus came up to him and challenged him, asking, "Where's the teacher you used to follow?" John replied, "He has gone back to the place from which he came," which is, the incorruptible realm, as we'll get into. The Pharisee said, "That Nazarene misled you," and that's plural. That's all of the disciples of Christ. "Told you lies, closed your hearts, and turned you away from your ancestral traditions." When I heard these things, I, John, turned away from the temple and went off to a deserted mountainous place. And like I said, I think there's a correlation between God and gravity. Check out my last video. I was very unhappy, saying to myself, how was the Savior designated? Why did his Father send him into this world? Who is his Father? What kind of realm will we go to? For although he told us this realm is modeled on the imperishable realm, he didn't teach us about the latter. So that's saying that this earth and world that we live in is directly reflective of paradise or the pleroma or whatever incorruptible realm that God, the Father on high, exists within. All of a sudden, while I was contemplating these things, behold, the heavens opened and the whole of creation shone with a light from above, and the world quaked. I was afraid, yet behold, a little child appeared before me in the light. I continued looking at him as he became an old man, and then he changed again, becoming like a young man. I didn't understand what I was seeing, but the one likeness had several forms in the light, and these likenesses appeared each through the other, and the vision had 3 forms. And so to me, when I read anything that's talking about 3 forms, that is immediately reminiscent of the Godhead, because it's got 3 branches. It's got 3 extensions of the Godhead. And in my Godhead, my Trinity, that I hold dear, because it's been what I can only imagine as revealed to me through the ancient Abrahamic traditions, is that you have the culminated properties of Anu, which is the creator of the universe, and Ki, which is the creator of humanity, and what I call El, because that stands for pretty much everything God wanted to designate with an L. You've got logos, you've got light, you've got the left. The people who are just left. I don't know. But yeah, and light's a pretty big form of this. He said to me, John, why doubt? Why be afraid? Don't you know this image? Be not afraid. I am with you, always. I am the Father, the Mother, the Son. I am the incorruptible purity. I have come to teach you about what is, and what was, and what will be, in order for you to understand the invisible world, and the world that is visible, and the immovable race of perfect humanity. Raise your head, understand my lessons, share them with any others who have received the Spirit, who are from the immovable race of perfect humanity. And that is the perfect race of the immovable race of perfect humanity is just those humans that are born on this earth, whose purpose is to do good and to serve the Father. He who is on high, God, above all, Almighty, is what I personally think. And you know, you should choose to do good. You should always, if you're watching, please always try to be a bright spot in someone's day. You never know when somebody might have had a bad day and might just need a little bit of kindness. And then this is where we get into my actual argument for on perfect number. The inexpressible one. The one rules all. Nothing has authority over it. It is the God, it is the Father of everything, Holy One, the invisible one over everything. It is uncontaminated, pure light, no eye can bear to look within. The One is the invisible Spirit. It is not right to think of it as a God or as like God. It is more than just God. Nothing is above it, nothing rules it. Since everything exists within it, it does not exist within anything. Since it is not dependent on anything, it is eternal. It is absolutely complete and so needs nothing. It is utterly perfect light. The One is without boundaries. Nothing exists outside of it to border it. The One cannot be investigated. Nothing exists apart from it to investigate. The One cannot be measured. Nothing exists external to it to measure it. The One who cannot be seen, for no one can envision it. The One is eternal, for it exists forever. The One is inconceivable, for no one can comprehend it. The One is indescribable, for no one can put any words to it. The One is infinite light, purity, holiness, stainless. The One is incomprehensible, perfectly free from corruption. Not perfect, not blessed, not divine, but superior to such concepts. Neither physical nor unphysical, neither immense nor infinitesimal, it is impossible to specify in quantity or quality, for it is beyond knowledge. The One is not a being among other beings, it is vastly superior, but it is not superior. It is outside of realms of being and time, for whatever is within realms of being was created. And whatever is within time had time allotted to it. The One receives nothing from anything. It simply apprehends itself in its own perfect light. The One is majestic. The One is measureless majesty, chief of all realms, producing all realms, light, producing light, life, producing life, blessedness, producing blessedness, knowledge, producing knowledge, good, producing goodness, mercy, producing mercy, generous, producing generosity. It does not possess these things. It simply is these things. It gives forth light beyond measure, beyond comprehension. What can I say? His realm is eternal, peaceful, silent, resting before everything. He is the head of every realm, sustaining each of them through goodness. Now, we see that the incorruptible One, that is the God, that is the ultimate power in this universe, that anybody who denies its existence is inherently foolish to me. And they should feel foolish for ever denying the fact that there could be one so powerful, one that could create all, one that the entire reality of our world cannot exist without this one very specific important fact, which is why it is important for our country, America, or my country anyhow, that this is one nation under God, that one God, no other God, no other possibility that you can worship, because there is nothing that can confine the totality of this one, is what I believe. Now, I will see that this one book, or this little passage, does mildly contradict, because it says one is incomprehensible, not perfect. But I think I'm using a different term than what he had initially done. And the second religious argument that I wish to put forth is simply the Quran. The clear Quran, which might as well have been named the Corrections, because this was created after the Council of Nicaea, when the Romans who killed Christ, who put Jesus on that cross, decided what the true word of the Christ was. And then they paganized him. They put the man who was on the cross as the centerpiece for their religion and had everyone bowing to him, bowing to a man. Are you kidding me? Bowing and worshiping a man when there's only one who should be worshipped and who should be praised on high in that way, and that is the one. And now, here's the nice thing about the Quran and the Islamic faith, is that Allah is literally just a translation for the one. They are taking this story without any knowledge of it. They had no knowledge that this Apocryphon of John could have happened. They had no idea that the one had already announced himself as such. I guess this is without gender, but still. But that same one came and inspired and raised up Muhammad from what he was. And there's a lot of falsehoods being spewed about the Quran and Muhammad. Here is the actual cool part about the Quran. Because if you didn't know, and I've said it before, Muhammad could not read or write. Meaning that the only place for God to reach him was through his own head and through his own heart. And he used the power of God. He used the word of God to rally his people, to unite his nations, for it is the sons of Abraham who will raise great nations. And Muhammad, being ordained the prophet that he was absolutely the unifying point to bring forth the great Arab nation. Because if we didn't have the great Arab nation, we probably wouldn't have the things like algebra or cubic expressions. The Islamic Golden Age from about the 8th century BC to about the 10th to 11th is the biggest part. It is the unsung hero of the Age of Enlightenment and the Age of Reason, in my opinion. But what happened in the Quran is Muhammad was informed. He was raised on high by God, the Father, the One, cast as his voice to preach the truth of the One, to rally. It was not him who wrote the Quran, because in God's infinite power, he told all, if they wished to challenge Muhammad's word, that they needed to express it in writing. At least this is what I believe. This is what I'm fairly certain of in this book. Nobody's told me that. I don't think I've read anything outside of just being able to ascertain. But this book, this correction to the Council of Nicaea, this correction right here was written in an attempt to debate the one nature of God, to debate the word of Muhammad, and they simply could not. But at the end of the day, it's this debate that made the faith of Judaism so strong. Because in order for Judaism and Hebrewism, or however you wish to call it, to function, is a debate amongst the others, to talk of God's plan, to talk of how it operates and how it functions. And when we quit debating the nature of God, that's when we let people tell us what God says. Anyway, here's a few things that people have said about Muhammad, real quick. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not Muslim. I do not believe that Muhammad was the last prophet. Because in order to say Muhammad was the last prophet, you immediately put a cap on the power of the one God. If the one God wishes to raise up another man the same way that he rose up Muhammad, well, what is stopping the one? What can a human being write down that says, that enforces the one to not raise up a new one when the time is right, when the message needs to be said? It's weakening God, and God should never be weakened because God is the all. James A. Meichner, in all things Muhammad was profoundly practical. When his beloved son Ibrahim died, an eclipse occurred, and rumors of God's personal condolence quickly arose. Whereupon Muhammad announced, an eclipse is a phenomenon of nature. It is foolish to attribute such things to the death or birth of a human being. Now, haters will say it's fake, but go watch my video on Genesis and Uranus, because our solar eclipses and lunar eclipses have a direct effect with Uranus. Like, I can prove that one mathematically. Because there's nothing as a routine with the lunar nodes as Uranus is. So please go watch that video if you wish. My choice of Muhammad to lead the list of world's most influential persons may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others, but he was the only man in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and secular levels. Michael H. Hart. I have studied Muhammad, the wonderful man, and in my opinion, he must be called the savior of humanity. I believe that if a man like him were to assume the leadership of the modern world, he would succeed in solving its problems in a way that would bring in much needed peace and happiness. George Bernard Shaw. And then finally, I became more than ever convinced that it was not the sword that won a place for Islam in those days in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement of the Prophet, the scrupulous regard for pledges, his intense devotion to his friends and followers, his intrepidity, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in God and in his own mission. These, and not the sword, carried everything before them and surmounted every obstacle. Mahatma Gandhi. So this is a guy who was studied by a lot of very, very intelligent people. And this is a really cool book. I really like it. I think that the only reason that people don't like this book is either because they're listed in the first surah as one of the wicked, or because they haven't taken the time to open it and listen to the words, to read them with your heart. Because the truth in this book that I read is the same truth that I found in the New Testament, and is the same truth that I find in the Nag Hammadi libraries, and is the same truth that I find in the Torah. At least the first 11 chapters of Genesis, because that's all I care about. You know, but I'm not one of those people that needs a savior to believe in a God. I'm not one of those people. It's just logical. You know, nothing can exist without the contingency of something else existing first. And, well, you eventually lead to that one indivisible part, which only could have created itself. It's kind of the way I believe. I just get kind of like tripped out on that book because a lot of people lie about that. But anyhow, the last religious argument that I'm about to make for an odd perfect number is invoking Gottfried Leibniz and his invention of binary. Because he developed binary because he believed that the entire universe, all of God's miracles, could be summed up as two parts. You know, there is and there isn't. There is yes and there is wrong. No, there is yin and yang. There is two to everything, good and evil, except for the one God. Is what I believe. But anyway, binary has a very specific correlation, and I've got that kind of on the screen right here. And so on here you see the two kind of famous equations. You've got the Mersenne prime equation, which I know it's supposed to be a prime number or Mersenne primes, but I'm not as worried about that. And then you have the perfect number formulation, which looks like that. And so the interesting thing about this is that if you were to just use this equation, whatever you put in to it, whatever you put for n, you will receive that many ones in binary. And you can see right over here, you know, for 1 you have 1, for 3 you have 11, for 7 you have 111. Kind of goes like that. Right here we see an almost exact and opposite thing happen, which is that now this n right here becomes the ones put in the front of it, and there's exactly n minus 1 zeros that follow, always, without fail. So what we know and what we can ascertain as a perfect number is that all perfect numbers that we know, and this is provable, I figured it out, all perfect numbers have the binary form P, or this is n ones, and then n minus 1 zeros. And that is the exact same thing you find with 1's binary structure. Because if you plug into the equation, if we take this equation and we go 1, right here, we go 1. We're going to plug this in, we're going to go 1, 1. This becomes 1, because anything brought to the power of 0 becomes 1. Weird how we've reached that in mathematics, and science struggles to understand it because it's a religious thing rather than a science thing. And right here, what do we get? 2 to the power of 1 is 2, minus 1 is 1. And then we get 1 times 1 equals 1. And that's something that's interesting. Why do I find this interesting? Because, you know, I think that one of the ones that's in every formation is God. It's the thing that you can't get away from. And the other one that you have in the equation is nothing more than a simple tally mark. Is nothing more than the bare minimum measurement. Because I think I saw in one of my comments that, like, it's a matter of uniqueness with the number 1. And so you get 2 different ones. You get the great all-powerful 1, which allows all that can exist. And you get also a simple tally mark. 2 different ones. I refuse to believe anything different. That's kind of my argument, is that 1 as a perfect number satisfies the binary requirements of all other perfect numbers, and it is the only odd number that does that. Meaning that I think for every reason that 2 is a prime number, 1 should be considered a perfect number. Now, just as a little amuse-bouche for everybody who's still watching, who for whatever reason has heard me talk and thinks, you know what, This guy is either insane or something, but he's got gumption. That's what I hope. Over here, we have the standard binary, but we have something that's also called ternary, and this is a number base that I developed, and it is part of a 6-prong number base following some runic symbol language that I genuinely believe should be able to merge technology with the MGE, magnetic gravitational effect, that exists on the Earth. I can't prove anything until it happens, but I'm pretty sure, because that's kind of what I developed it for. But anyway, the logic behind ternary is that I was trying to define what numbers are and what makes a number. And so one of the first peculiarities with numbers is that we have odd numbers and we have even numbers. All even numbers are contingent on the number 2, and odd numbers don't seem to follow that very much. They aren't contingent on 2. They don't have 2 a part of them. That's the difference between odd and even numbers. And so I was thinking, if binary is base 2 and you increase every instance, of 1, so you're counting 1 up, I took it upon myself and thought, hey, maybe that's because 2 is the first prime number and 1 makes sense to be the subbase, because that's what I call as a subbase. And so I figured, what if I used a base 3 system on base 3? But seeing as the first major difference in numbers is whether they're odd or even, why don't I just combine them? And then I can increase any time an even number happens. Seemed logical enough to me. And so base 3 sub 2 is what I call it. And so the nice thing is that because this is base 3, we have to look at routinity. And what is going to be the routine nature? How do we get routinity? Well, in binary, it's kind of contingent on exponential powers of 2. Every exponential power of 2 equals a full number. So if you have 1, that's 2. If you have 10, that's 4. If you have 100, that's 100 is 8. 100 is 4. 1 is 1. 10 is 2. 10 is 2. 100 is 4. 1,000 is 8. 10,000 is 16. Whatever. You do the math. We have to check with the 3's. And the thing is that whenever you have 3x, the ternary value will always be x once. Similarly to how Mersenne primes, or the 2n, 2 to the power n minus 1, operates in binary, just the standard exponential values of 3 do that. And so I can show you real quick. And so the way that you get this is you have to, basically 3 to the power 4 is 81, right? And so we've got 81. First thing you do is you reduce it to the nearest even number so that you can divide it by 2. And so you bring it down to 40. And then you look up what is 40 in base 3 ternary. And you get 81 equals 1, 2, 3, 4. Because it's 3 to the power 4. And I've built this out a lot of different ways. It's actually a really cool system that I really enjoy. And I think, I'll be honest, when I developed my system, it's what made me really come to terms and fully believe in God. This stuff is gnarly. If it actually works the way I think it does, or that it should, big money. Big money. But anyway, that's going to be my video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.